Thank you. So, I'm very honored to be here, to be invited to tell you something of my city, of Amsterdam. My name is Niels Holstein, and I'm not an urban planner, but I'm actually a project manager working. We have a specific department in Amsterdam for project management. But I must say I have quite a lot of experience of managing green infrastructure projects. So I've done this for 10 years, and I'm, as Susanna, part of the Perfect partnership. And in Perfect, we focus on the multiple benefits of green infrastructure. But I've done a lot of projects also on climate change adaptation. But I'm also now leading since a year the project Resilio, and it's on blue-green roofs. And in this presentation, I will tell you something about that too. So, what do I want to do? It works. So, first of all, I want to tell you something about the development of Amsterdam, the context of why we have a green infrastructure challenge, show you some trends, and go over some of our policies to address these challenges. And at the end of my presentation, I want to become more concrete and zoom in on specific projects that are an answer to these challenges. So, I think this is a well-known, sort of iconic picture of Amsterdam. What you see is one of the canals, and what you also see immediately is that it has quite a green image. So the canals are tree-lined, and actually this is an investment in the green infrastructure. We call it now green infrastructure, but it started in the 17th century. We call this our golden age. So if you look at the planning history of Amsterdam, I think you can say that there is a sort of history of planned investment in green infrastructure, starting from our famous canals and going further in the 18th century, in the 19th century, where we developed our city parks. But what you do also see in this picture is a sort of at the horizon, you see some high-rise building. That is the South Axis neighborhood, and it's actually our financial district. And there we encounter also a new challenge of introducing new green infrastructure. Because what is happening at our city now? We are facing a sort of new booming phase of growth in housing, economic development. As other European cities, we encountered a crisis in 2008, but now we are rapidly recovering from this. So we are now having a rapid growth our mayor and her cabinet has decided that we should grow with 75,000 new dwellings until, well, 2025, or even, in a period of 10 years. That means that we are building 7,500 new dwellings per year. And we do this because we want to compete with other European capital regions like London and Frankfurt and Paris, etc. And what this map shows is that, and that's actually a new decision, we don't do this by expanding the city in the surrounding green areas. So all of the new dwellings are built within the city parameter. And you see the red zones are these new areas where we build these 75,000 new dwellings. So this means quite a sort of effort in densifying the city. Nope. Yeah, I skip one. Oh. So, what we know now by all kinds of research, but of course by our own experience, green infrastructure is vital in such a rapid growth. We know now that green infrastructure provides all services. The terminology has been used also this morning. Green infrastructure has many ecosystem services. So if we want to stay a pleasant, healthy environment, we must also invest in our green infrastructure. So I told you before that in the 17th century we had a planned investment in green infrastructure, creating a green legacy that's already there around the canals, for example, in our city parks. But now, because of this rapid growth, we are facing another challenge again of also increasing and enhancing the quality of our green infrastructure. So, what are these benefits? In general, it's good for the health and the well-being of our population. We need green infrastructure for the climate change. It's the most important means for climate change adaptation. Our cities becoming hotter, we're getting more rainstorms, and green infrastructure is countering the urban heat island effect and is very important for rainwater retention. And of course, it was also presented this morning again, we have a dramatic loss of biodiversity. So also cities have to play a role in preserving and strengthening the biodiversity. And actually, this is of course what this whole conference is all about. And this is also what we are studying and exchanging between partners in the perfect partnership. So, confronting these two phenomena, this rapid growth, 75,000 new dwellings within the existing city borders, and we know the value of green infrastructure, that is a confrontation. So, do we, the first question, in terms of quantity, do we have enough green infrastructure to face this? And what is the quality of this green infrastructure? Well, this is a picture of the Vondelpark, I think the most famous park in Amsterdam, facing, well, massive usage in summer. Is this the quality of green infrastructure we want? Can we find a new right balance? And of course, this picture shows two images of water in the city. In hot summers, we need the water. And sometimes, in rainstorms in autumn, we actually have an abundance of it, and it creates a problem and even economic damage. So, do we have enough green space, and do we have enough green space to keep our cities healthy and thriving? So, I show you now a picture of a central policy document. It's the Amsterdam Structural Vision. And the Amsterdam Structural Vision was approved in 2011, and the green infrastructure was already then important as a sort of central aspect of our policy strategies. What you can see, you see actually quite a lot of green, because Amsterdam is like Copenhagen, a finger city, and you see green wedges entering into the urban fabric quite near to the city center. And the Amsterdam Structural Vision has protected these green wedges. So the Structural Vision is 2011, but in the Netherlands, I don't know how this is in Slovak Republic, we are entering a new phase because a new planning, more integral planning law is introduced, and it will be, I think will be approved around next year because there's a lot of preparation. And that's the environmental planning law. And in the environmental planning law, green infrastructure is even becoming more important. So what we are doing now is preparing in Amsterdam the implications of this new environmental law and making green infrastructure even more important than it is now. The Amsterdam Structural Vision already has some protection of green infrastructure. It's called the main green infrastructure, and it's actually quite comparable what Attila presented just now, like the green net in Graz, or I understand also in Linz. And what's the meaning of this this green infrastructure? Is that it is protected, so building activities are not allowed in the main green infrastructure. There is, of course, some exceptions. So when there's building construction supportive for the usage of green infrastructure, like urban farming, or there can be small cafeteria in city parks, then it's allowed, but it is protected from the main urban dynamic. We have an ecological vision in Amsterdam. So what this map shows is that we've done research on, well, how many species do we have of birds, insects, small animals, And we know that migrating and exchanges of populations is for ecological system very important. So we have identified bottlenecks, and these are the red spots. So we have policies to solve these bottlenecks, to try to build connections also for animals and insects. And what we've done is that in the preparation of this new environmental planning law, we have set some standards and norms already. And here you see them. And this applies only to newly to be built areas. So we introduced a sort of norm, a standard for percentage or square meters of green infrastructure to be built, or that's is a wrong terminology, but when there are new dwellings, there is a standard now for how many square meters has to be designed also and implemented for green infrastructure. So we make a sort of subdivision between public green space, which is actually for usage of residents to have leisure time, to recreate, to meet each other, and more, greenery that's for ecosystem purposes, for rain retention, but also for the ecological function of the green infrastructure. And this is connected to a sort of threefold urban typology. So high dense areas, they have to have sort of minimum also for green infrastructure. But of course we have very different gradients with low density areas more at the center of at the edges of our city. So there is already policy in place for developing new green infrastructure in the new urban areas. And we had the recent 4 years, we had what we call the Green Agenda. It was a quite large investment program. I think we invested sort of 30 million euros into new green infrastructure. And it was targeted at several topics. We have, like in Austrian cities, we have a quite extensive green roof subsidy, a grant scheme. So every individual or every owner of a building, or even tenants, if it's allowed by the housing corporation, can get subsidy for green roofing. We have a schoolyard greening program. We call it the Amsterdam Schoolyard Incentive. We have invested in green sustainable connections. So, as perhaps you have visited Amsterdam, we have quite a lot of bicycles in the city, and we use also bicycle paths for investment in new green infrastructure. And of course, we also invested in the enhancement of the quality of city parks and ecological zones. And in the Perfect project, we did some research on the positive impact of these investments. So we looked whether investment in the Northern Park, that is one of our city parks, also led to better usages and was also improving the health of the visitors. So we possibly know there's a good, very positive connection between green infrastructure and health. So we did only invest this money in the green infrastructure, but we did also some surveys, and we monitor on the output. And I can tell you something of one of the highlights. By now, and it is a monitor that ends in 2018, we have actually implemented 40,000 square meters of new green roofs. 21 new green schoolyards are implemented. Of these ecological bottlenecks, 80 are resolved now. We have established 3 new connections between larger ecological zones. So connecting actually small-scale green infrastructure with the landscape surrounding the Amsterdam city. And also specifically, we invested in existing city parks, meaning, for instance, making the entry zones better. Sometimes the entry zones are not visible for people. And as I told you before, in Perfect, we did some research whether this has also, we can prove the impact. And well, we are now at wrapping up the research, And I think by the end of this year, we can publish the results of that. So, to conclude, there is, I think, quite an achievement already in Amsterdam. But with the rapid growth we are now facing, I think we should do more. It's simply not enough. So the mayor and her cabinet gave an assignment to us, our civil servants, to draft a new, more long-term green space vision. And that's the Green Vision 2050. So, to explain also to the wider public, but also to have a professional exchange, we refer to the ecosystem services. Susanna also already presented this picture before. So, the whole notion of green infrastructure we are talking about today is on what is actually the function of green infrastructure in cities. It's not something, of course, also it's very pleasant environment, but by using this notion of infrastructure, we will want to send out the message it is as important as our traffic infrastructure. It carries important urban functions. And we can, of course, categorize these. And, well, I think the main categories are well known. It has regulating services, supporting services, cultural services, and production services. But what we notice is sometimes in terms of communication, this is not always clear. So we added actually an extra layer in also introducing user values to be able to explain better to ordinary people what kind of services. So it attaches to personal values, to cultural values. So these two ecosystem services analyses have led to a sort of calculation of green benefits. We entered a sort of research to do some economic valuation, also to send out this message, it is as important as our grey infrastructure in our city. And actually it's a sort of methodology of capitalizing, monetarizing the value of green infrastructure. And again, I will give you some highlights in terms of outcomes, the outcomes we had with this research, and also the ministry was involved with this study in Amsterdam. So if you look at the function of green infrastructure for physical movement, what you see is that people use the green infrastructure to move, to have physical exercise, to become healthy. I think we have added 1,000 kilometers of green infrastructure where people actually use this for physical exercise, and it is the length of 24 marathons. Important, I already told you, Imperfect Amsterdam is specifically focuses on the relation between green infrastructure and health. We know now by research that a good green environment decreases the visits to general practitioners, to doctors, with 5%. So we can monetize that, we can calculate what it means in terms of costs that are spared. In terms of water retention, so the climate change function of green infrastructure, 140 million cubical meters can be used to retain water, and that is actually saving on your sewage system. So we also know that real estate, is gaining, or has higher value when it is in a pleasant surrounding. So we have 11.4 billion euros of real estate. We have calculated that at least 50 million euros increase of value will be achieved by having a good green infrastructure in the environment. And also heat, our cities becoming hotter and hotter. We experienced it this summer again. 1.9 degrees of cooling average because of the green infrastructure. So the value is clear, but with these norms I just presented to you, we should make 20 new Wandelparks in the city of Amsterdam, and the map shows it. And simply the green squares are on already built up areas, so we don't have space enough. We simply don't have space enough if we would follow the norms we set ourselves. So we were forced to have a more intelligent strategy of increasing our green infrastructure and enhancing its quality. So we formulated 4 partial strategies for green infrastructure. The first strategy is on creating green nearby, close to the people, close to the needs and wishes and desires they have for their green infrastructure. The second strategy is simply on, we have a great green capital in our city parks already there, enhancing the quality of the city parks. And where it's possible, in new build-up areas, create new city parks. We already have 38 city parks, but we are now planning in the new areas, new city parks. Important, improve the connectivity and the accessibility of green infrastructure. So, as I told you, use greenery to, well, for your infrastructure, your grey infrastructure. So, make green tram lanes, support the bicycle infrastructure with green infrastructure. And, as I thought you saw in the structural vision, we have a sort of large green metropolitan landscape. Also invest in that landscape, but because that is used by Amsterdammers for recreation. So, this leads to a sort of, more sort of different types of ambitions. So we want to create large diversity in green spaces for all Amsterdam people. In Amsterdam, there's not simply one Amsterdammer. There are different cultures, different lifestyles, different ages. So we want to make a careful analysis how people use their greenery in their own environment and what types of uses. So that's the reason we also introduce user values of ecosystem services. So the green is already there. This means an investment in the usage or, creating that kind of green infrastructure that is attuned to the demands and the needs of the people themselves. I don't know how this is the case in Bratislava, but when you look at green infrastructure, many green infrastructure is in private hands. We have 8,000 allotments. And this totally amounts to a sort of, 10 Vondelparks, so 5,000 square. And of course, we appreciate the usage, but we are now talking with the organizations and the owners of the allotments, whether we can transform it to semi-public areas. So people can grow their own food, but sometimes they are blocking the connectivity we want. So make public paths so that all Amsterdam can also 5 minutes. Oh, yeah.
No,
okay.
You already spent your time. It's just fascinating to listen to you.
Then I'll go fast forward. So we have so this is the transformation of ownership. Invest in the larger metropolitan areas. And as I said, use the infrastructures there by making green the standard for this infrastructure. And also, very important, invest in green infrastructure, green nearby in our neighborhoods. And there are also, of course, when we have new developments, there are also all kinds of, innovative ways to enhance it. And one of the main policies is don't do it top down, but do it with your own communities. Community engagement is key in having a better green infrastructure. So now I want to zoom in on specific projects that make this ambition real by an on-the-ground approach. As I told you, I'm part of the Resilio project. I'm leading this project, and it's part of the Rainproof program. So one of the impacts, the negative impacts of climate change is that we will have pluvial flooding in our cities. And that's the reason why we launched the Rainproof program. So the left picture explains to the public the problem. There's so many water there in heavy cloudbursts that we simply can cope with that. So we have to do together, and the Rainproof program is actually not a top-down program, but it's more a network approach, a platform approach. And we invite people, make your neighborhood rainproof, to have dry feet. So we had our floodings, perhaps, I don't know how the situation in Bratislava, but we can't cope with a 70mm rain burst in 6 hours. Then the effect is like this. Of course, the children like, because they have a rubber boat then, but the people who have a cellar don't like it. So it leads to economic damages and serious disturbances, of course. So what we did now is we created this new innovative approach, and that's the Resilio project. I wanted to tell you 2 minutes of my time. So the main idea is we will have these problems in coping with heavy rainburst. So why don't we use unused surfaces that is there already, the rooftops? I think it's calculated that we have 12.5 square kilometers of flat rooftops that can be used to store rainwater. And we can make intelligent connections. Because nowadays the first generation of green roofs are the sedum plants. If we have water for these plants underneath, we can have much higher quality of greenery on our roofs. And what we are doing now in the Resilio project is we build a smart grid of connected blue-green roofs, which actually is introducing another layer in the city of rainwater buffering. And we do it like this. So this is the message. Resilio, laat je dak leven, that's Dutch. In English it means bring your roof to life with the greenery, which can be of higher quality because there's water underneath. And we do it in a consortium. I think it's a wonderful consortium of 10 partners, all Dutch partners. And we have all the interest and the knowledge together. We have the authority, the water authority, the municipality itself. We have knowledge institutes, the Free University and the University of Applied Science. We have housing corporations that are willing to have 10,000 of square meters on their roofs with the new blue-green roofs. And we have specialist companies and NGOs in the consortium. And what we did with the Rainproof program, we analyzed where are the bottlenecks. So the red and the green spots is, we know that we will have problems there when it will start heavy raining. And we selected these areas to have this grid of new blue-green roofs. We did some measurements before. So the precursor project was the Smart Roof 2.0. And it is evidence now that a blue-green roof works. It provides the water retention. It delivers a higher biodiversity on our roofs. And and it's also important, it provides cooling. So this is the roof. You see many layers, and the important element is the smart valve, because it communicates with weather stations. So when the weather forecast in 4 hours, you will have a 60 millimeter rainburst, then controlled, the water is released, because we have sensors in the sewage system, we have sensors in the public space, so we can have an intelligent steering. And that is done in the water platform. So the water platform, it's quite a difficult picture, but it's introducing a balance between macro level information on how's the water situation, what is the weather situation, and micro level usages. Because we want also the residents who live in the buildings that have smart blue-green roofs to use this water for their own plants, in the future perhaps for their grey water system. So this is the city of Amsterdam. I showed you a first picture from above, and you say, well, it's quite green, but this is our ambition. I think we still have huge opportunities to green our cities, so it's a dream. So the title of my presentation was, how can we build a new green legacy? There is already a green legacy, I think, by using our underused rooftops in a smart, intelligent and green way. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.